coming home, I'm coming home. Tell the world I'm coming home.
Honnêtement, j'ai essayé d'imaginer plein de scénarios dans ma tête, mais ça a rien à voir, c'est irréel. J'ai l'impression de vivre un rêve, donc je suis juste heureux de vivre l'instant.
The 31-year-old man held the sobbing woman tightly against his chest. He couldn't say a word. Just like him, the woman couldn't tear her eyes away from his face, as if the moment she blinked, this dream would vanish. But to reach this embrace, he had spent 31 years living with a profound loneliness and one question that had never received an answer. Abandoned 31 years ago, French-Vietnamese director reunites with birth mother through intuition and DNA test. In a small therapy room in Paris, Arthur Chareire, a 31-year-old French citizen with distinctly Asian features, leaned back in his chair and quietly told the psychologist, "I felt lonely since I was very young, even though my adoptive parents were always there for me. Maybe because I was an abandoned child." It was Arthur's third therapy session. For the first time in his life, he dared to name the pain he had carried since childhood. Arthur had loving French adoptive parents who cared for him deeply. He had never lacked material things. But deep inside, there was an emptiness he could never fill. And he knew that if he didn't seek the truth, that pain would follow him for the rest of his life. Abandoned past. Arthur Chareire was born on August 19, 1994, at Bach Mai Hospital in Hanoi, with the birth name Vu Van Dao. According to hospital records, his biological mother was Nguyen Thi Hoi, a farmer living in Jeong Exe Commune, Gia Lam District. For days after giving birth, she quietly left the hospital. The tiny newborn, weighing 2.7 kilograms, cried day and night, longing for the warmth of his mother's arms. Medical staff tried to trace her back to her hometown, but found no further information. The child was classified as abandoned. A few months later, Dao was adopted by a French couple through international adoption procedures. The boy received a new name, Arthur Chareire, and officially became a French citizen. That day, Arthur was welcomed like a star by his entire family at Charles de Gaulle Airport. Relatives drove up to Paris carrying small welcome banners. After the long flight, Arthur still slept peacefully in his adoptive mother's arms. His adoptive mother, Monique, had also endured the pain of a broken marriage. She could no longer have children after complications from her second birth, so she decided to adopt an orphan. It took 4 years, navigating strict requirements, to be approved for adopting a child from abroad. That's why, when she held Arthur in her arms, she poured all her love and hope into that little boy. Mrs. Monique recalled, "When he was little, Arthur loved hearing me sing lullabies. Kids in Europe usually sleep in their own rooms very early, but Arthur wanted to sleep in the same room with his mom and dad until he was 5 or 6 years old." Arthur grew up surrounded by affection in the peaceful region of Cantal. He studied music, played sports, and had a fulfilling childhood. He once shared emotionally, "She gave me all her love." But no matter how great that love was, it could never erase the feeling of abandonment deep inside him. The pain of discovering. As Arthur grew older, he increasingly realized he didn't look like his parents. When he learned he was adopted, everything inside him seemed to collapse. Even though he had never lacked for anything, he could never fill the emptiness in his heart. Mrs. Monique said that she and her husband never hid the fact that Arthur was adopted. From the time he was in elementary school, they had openly told him the truth. When Arthur was still young, Mrs. Monique had thought about trying to find his birth mother for him. However, The demands of family life and her job as a preschool teacher left her unsure of where to even begin. From ages 16 to 25, Arthur went through periods of deep depression, feeling lost and directionless, and even falling apart at times. He shared, "I was afraid I wouldn't be happy like everyone else. My adoptive mom was sad, but she didn't fully understand the unhappiness inside me." Like many teenagers in their rebellious years, Arthur had phases where he couldn't open up to his parents. The pressure of school and the expectations that came from his adoptive mother's love unintentionally became a burden. At times, the relationship between mother and son grew tense. But in the end, they always chose to listen to each other. Arthur completed college, and Monique gradually came to understand her son's deepest longing and decided to support him in searching for his birth mother. Mrs. Monique still cherishes and carefully keeps all of Arthur's adoption documents as precious mementos in a small box. When her son grew up, she handed everything over to Arthur. Arthur held the yellowed birth certificate in his hands, the father's section left blank, and felt a wave of pity. He didn't blame his birth mother. Instead, he was always ready to forgive her. He said, "Back then, my mother might have been in a very difficult financial situation where she had no husband and feared society's harsh judgment. She simply didn't have the courage to get through it." The desire to reunite, yet haunted by fear of rejection. Arthur had never seen his birth mother. He didn't know what she looked like or whether she shared any features with him. But she always appeared in his dreams, and those dreams were usually nightmares. They stemmed from the deep fear of being rejected once again. He confided, "I long to meet my birth mother, but I'm terrified she'll refuse to reunite." The pressure from everyday life, combined with the intense longing to find her, pushed him to a breaking point. Eventually, he sought help from a psychologist to relieve the overwhelming stress. He said, "Therapy isn't just for people with mental illness. Everyone needs counseling, no matter how big or small the issue is." After that, Arthur decided to quit his job at the film production company, where he had been a founding member, to focus entirely on traveling to Vietnam to search for his mother.
Et c'est que le 19 janvier que je rentre en contact avec Tan Sin Yun. Et c'est là que je vais quitter la société que j'ai cofondée avec deux associés il y a plus de 8 ans pour vraiment me concentrer sur mes recherches, me concentrer sur mon indépendance. Je vais les quitter en bons termes et je continue encore à travailler avec eux, mais j'avais vraiment besoin de ce temps-là, de cette année-là pour me consacrer à cette recherche et à retrouver mes origines.
He knew the journey would be incredibly difficult, but he believed it was the best choice for him right now. He shared openly, "Quitting my job might feel like a sad decision at this moment, but I'm doing it for a future that could be even better." Arthur planned to apply for a 3-month visa, possibly extendable, buy a motorbike, and travel from north to south across Vietnam, while also visiting neighboring countries in his search for his mother. Using the few details he had from the records, his birth mother's name, Nguyen Thi Hoi, and the address Dung Sa Gia Lum, he began the search for his birth mother. At the same time, Arthur planned to collaborate with YouTubers in Vietnam to spread the word, hoping someone would recognize the information and help connect him with his mother. The woman named Hoi comes forward. On April 21st, 2025, a woman unexpectedly contacted Dan Tri newspaper. She said her name is Nguyen Thi Hoi, born in 1960, currently living in Gia Lam, Hanoi, and she wanted to undergo a DNA test to check for a blood relationship with the young man Arthur. Her circumstances matched Arthur's almost exactly. Choking back tears, she firmly stated, "There's a very high chance that he is my son." She recounted that early in 1994, she became pregnant, but the fetus was diagnosed with slow development and required treatment at Bach My Hospital for 3 full months. On August 19th, 1994, she gave birth by cesarean to a baby boy weighing just over 2 kilograms. 1 week after the birth, Mrs. Hoy quietly left the hospital. Even so, she secretly tried to find out about her son, how he was doing, whether anyone had adopted him, and if that family would treat him well. Later, through some sources, she learned that her son had been adopted by a family in France. And that was all. She received no further information about the family that would allow her to contact them later. With deep pain, she said, "At that time, I had no husband and worked as a farmer, so life was very hard. When I gave him up for adoption, I hoped he would have a comfortable life and a good education. If he had stayed with me, he would certainly have suffered. For many years now, I have never stopped feeling tormented by that decision." All these years, deep in her heart, she has always prayed for her son to live a peaceful and happy life. Mrs. Hoy never married. She has lived quietly and devoted herself to doing good deeds for many years to make up for the mistake of abandoning her child back then. Waiting anxiously for the DNA results. On the morning of May 21st, Mrs. Hoy and her relatives went to the Dan Tri newspaper headquarters to receive the DNA test results between her and Arthur. Arthur, unable to return to Vietnam yet, could only join via video call. The results confirmed that Nguyen Thi Hoy and Arthur share a mother-son blood relationship with a 99.96% probability. Mrs. Hoy burst into tears. The overwhelming happiness made her afraid to believe it was real. Arthur had barely slept the entire night. He said, "I didn't sleep at all last night. It all feels like a dream. I had prepared so many words to say, but right now I'm truly overwhelmed and emotional. Thank you, thank you. I don't know how many thank yous are enough for this miracle." Throughout the conversation, Mrs. Hoy never took her eyes off her son's face on the screen, her hands reaching out as if wanting to hold him, though she couldn't yet. Choking back sobs, she said, "My son, you've grown up so much." She repeatedly expressed her gratitude to Arthur's adoptive parents for loving and raising her son into the man he is today, though she desperately wanted to meet him. Mrs. Hoy only told her son to take good care of his health, focus on his work, and come home to reunite with the family when he was ready. Arthur urged his mother to stay healthy, to smile more instead of crying, and reassured her, "I'll come back to Vietnam soon to visit you. I want to hold you tightly right now." The embrace after 31 years. On the morning of September 13th, it was finally the day mother and son, Mrs. Hoy and Arthur, officially met after 31 years. At Terminal 2 of Noi Bai International Airport, Mrs. Hoy wore a green out dye, her eyes fixed on the exit door, waiting for the son she had longed for. Beside her stood 10 relatives, all sharing the same nervous anticipation. She had hardly slept the night before, only wishing for dawn to come so she could see her son in the flesh after 31 years apart. When the automatic doors opened, Mrs. Hoy rushed forward in tears, holding her son tightly and softly whispering, "My son," after years of holding it in. Arthur held his mother just as tightly. The relatives around them couldn't hold back their own tears. Arthur shared, "Before coming back to Vietnam, I didn't have much time to imagine this reunion moment. After so many nights of waiting, I finally returned to my homeland. My heart was pounding. I couldn't believe this was real." In their reunited embrace, Mrs. Hoy's trembling hands gently stroked his hair and traced the lines of his face. Arthur softly wiped the tears streaming down his mother's cheeks, patted her shoulder to comfort her, and rested his cheek against her shoulder. Mrs. Hoy said emotionally. The moment I saw my son again, I felt lightheaded with emotion. I still can't believe it's real. It's all like a miracle. Arthur opened up. My mother is quite shy and reserved in conversation. In the days I'm in Hanoi, I'll spend a lot of time talking with her, reconnecting the mother-son bond that was broken for so many years. Arthur also told his relatives, "Hello, family. I've come home. Thank you all so much. My dream has finally come true." In November 2025, Mrs. Monique and her husband Philippe took the long 14-hour flight from France to Vietnam to meet their son's birth mother. Mrs. Hoy, Arthur's biological mother, held a bouquet of flowers and embraced the French woman who had raised her son from infancy. They held hands tightly, tears streaming down their faces, too choked up to speak. Mrs. Monique shared, "For me, this trip is very special. It feels like the circle of fate closing. More than 3 decades ago, I came to Hanoi to pick up Arthur. This time, I want to hand my son back to Mrs. Hoy." Mrs. Hoy had never dared imagine that fate would one day bring them together again. She said, "I owe so much to Mr. and Mrs. Monique. Back then, if my son hadn't been taken in by such a kind family, Arthur wouldn't have the happy life he has today." Mrs. Monique opened up. "I wanted my son to be happy, so I fully supported Arthur in searching for his birth mother. When he told us he had found Mrs. Hoy, my husband and I could hardly believe it was real. This reunion journey feels like a fairy tale. Arthur is now starting to learn Vietnamese so he can talk more with his mother, since she doesn't speak French. A translation app has become an essential tool for the whole family." Witnessing his birth mother and adoptive parents meeting again, Arthur said emotionally, "Even though I've only been back in Vietnam for 2 months, I truly feel this is my homeland. The people are so kind, the food is delicious, and the family warmth is incredible." The young director just finished a 2-week-plus motorbike trip to Ta Shua and Sapa. Arthur is researching the procedures to reclaim Vietnamese citizenship. In March 2026, he plans to bring Mrs. Hoy to France for a visit. Arthur confided, "My mother's life has been full of hardship. I want this trip to give her time for herself, to rediscover joy and the peace she truly deserves."